I would love to go back and do it again. If you said right now, let's get the band back together and we can go have one more shot at it, I'm coming hard at it. I got a million more ideas how to make it better. I'm in. So yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things I've ever done in life is be part of EA Sports MMA.
What's up, Dan Dans? That's just a little taste of what's to come. Today's video is a 2+ hour interview with 3 of the head honchos from EA Sports MMA, one of my favorite games from the PS3, Xbox 360 generation. If you have not seen my in-depth retrospective on this game, The Life and Death of EA Sports MMA, I highly recommend you check it out. After all, that's the video that made this interview today possible. All 3 of my guests today saw this video, they hopped into the comments, and they shared stories of what it was like working on this game, what the legacy of this game has meant to them, so on and so forth. And we got to talking behind the scenes, and we were like, you know what? It would be good to get everybody together and just put some of this out there. Finally, 12 years later, let's tell some of these stories. I'm so thankful that all 3 of these guys came together, came on this channel, and decided that this is where they wanted to tell those stories. Because this game was really important to me right around the time that it came out. Like I said in my retrospective, I was the only person there at GameStop at midnight picking up a copy of EA Sports MMA while everybody else was grabbing a copy of Fallout New Vegas. There are links down in the description if you'd like to check in with all 3 of my guests today to see what they're working on these days and what they've been up to since EA Sports MMA launched, and I highly recommend you check those out. You'll notice that the sound quality is not 10 out of 10 perfect. You'll notice that the video is actually slightly behind the audio. It doesn't matter. Look, you can minimize the window if you want. This is a storytelling platform. The guys are here to shoot the shit and reveal things that you and I never knew before. That's what matters here today. The Life and Death of EA Sports MMA, that's a video experience. This, you can just listen to. Now let's get the introductory bullshit out of the way, and then we will jump right into the interview itself. Thanks for watching, guys. This video and every video on this channel is made possible by your support on patreon.com/616entertainment. I couldn't do this without you, and your contributions keep this channel alive. You can also grab an official shirt over on prowrestlingtees.com/616entertainment. What's up, Dan Dans? Welcome to a very special interview, or I guess it's more of a roundtable, a reunion of sorts with some of the head honchos from EA Sports MMA, which is to this day right up there for my favorite MMA game of all time. In January, I put out a video, The Life and Death of EA Sports MMA. I just wanted to celebrate this game that me and my friend loved back in the day. And all of you guys kind of showed up in the comments, and this apparently got passed around through the development team, and I was like, oh shit, this was very important to them. Like, that's very cool. So today I'm joined by the creative director from EA Sports MMA, Mr. Jason Barnes.
You made that video, like you said, we made it rounds. It was awesome. Got our discussion going again. Watched more videos. It's awesome to come back and talk about this.
It's very cool to have you here. We've also got Nick Laing, the producer of EA Sports MMA, joining us today.
Let's see. I think, Barnes, you actually texted me the link. Like, some guy's talking about MMA. I was like, really? And I was distracted for the day. I watched it twice, and then I had to send that monster response because I was like, anybody that loves it this much needs to hear a little bit more of the story. And you could ask my kids and my wife. I was distracted. I was like telling everybody about it. So it's cool to kind of touch base and be able to talk to you and, kind of like extend some of this magic.
The magic is what I want to get into today. I want to hear the stories that you guys have, I guess, never had the platform to tell, and I want to put those out there because this game and this team deserves it. We're also joined today by Preston Dollinger, who is the jack of all trades, as we discovered before we hit the record button. But I would say, and you guys would say, the most important part of that was you were the live broadcast producer.
Yeah, that's kind of where most people probably from the community recognize me, just working in the forums, doing the live broadcast stuff, the fight promoter blogs, and the tail end of development. But yeah, started as a tester, did a little bit of design. Thank you, Barnes, for putting some faith in me there, calling me up to the big leagues. and then towards the end of it, doing the live broadcast stuff. Yeah.
Well, this is very exciting to have everybody here today, and I've got a whole poorly handwritten list of questions that I want to get to and topics, but I figure I'll throw a lot of these out, and then everybody can kind of give their answer to like what that meant to them, and not rigid at all, totally free ball. So we can go off on side tangents and all sorts of things. But I figure a good way to kick this off would just be like, here in 2022, over a decade since EA Sports MMA came out, what does this project feel like to look back on?
So look, the message I always tell my teams is be proud of what you're launching, but never satisfied. And I think that's what drove a lot of us at EA Sports, especially on iterative titles and things like that. And looking back on it, watching your video, watching all these things and having the memories come back, I have so much love for the team, for the game, for the experience. And then I have all these things that I wanted to make better, right? So I cringe, I smile, I laugh, I cringe. It's a little bit of everything. But, a lot of us have stayed in touch over the years. And it's awesome. I haven't seen Preston in a long time, so it's great to get the three of us back together. I wish we could get more, maybe some other time. But I look back as, when I look back at projects that I've worked on, NFL Street and EA Sports MMA are at the top of my list every single time. And that's the people, the game, the experience, and everything that went into it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I always have viewed this project with a lot of pride. We live in a really interesting industry where, unlike other industries like film, where you shoot it, you put it in the can, and then you can watch it later. Games, they tend to be ethereal. They go away after a while. The platforms no longer work. Eventually, the medium kind of starts to degrade. And in our case, it's pretty hard to play a game of EA MMA, especially the way it was intended with frankly some of the last roster updates and patches, things like that. So to have something like this still sort of strike a chord, and other people talk about it, reminds me how proud I was to be part of it. And we always talk about this. We've said this before, privately and in groups, that the game itself and the team was lightning in a bottle, and it's something that you chase in the creative world. And I just want to do something cool. I want to entertain people. I want to have fun. I want to work with people that I respect and people that challenge me and people that respect being challenged. And all that stuff worked out really, really well here. I think this is probably once, twice, maybe three times you get a project like this that means a lot to you, like emotionally. And so thinking about it so long ago, Barnes and I have something in common where the beginning and the end.
Oh, wow.
We first became a father when the game kicked off, and then our second child was born when the game launched.
That's a long cycle.
To see them, to like equate like the beginning and the end of that game with the age of our kids, and be like, it's not. I mean, they're in high school now.
That must really put it in perspective. Wow.
Yeah, my oldest kid got his driver's permit yesterday. Took him driving for the first time, terrified. So crazy.
Preston, how about you?
Okay. Well, yeah, pretty much. These two gentlemen encapsulated it pretty well. For me, thinking back on it, it was one of the few projects where, like, here's the thing: working in video games, like, everybody thinks it's going to be this awesome thing. You're just playing games all day, and it's work, and it's hard work. And Nick always said something I always remember. He said, if making games is easy, everybody would do it, and ain't everybody doing it. Even in these days and age, all the indie developers, it's tough business, and it's one of the few projects. Again, I don't want to disparage the industry. I'm not in it anymore, but even when you were there, it was hard to keep your head up sometimes because it was 40, 50, 60 hours, especially as a tester on games that are just still crashing on you, leading up to beta, and doing all these checks and starting over. So there was still. It's still a job, and like everything, every job there's ups and downs to it. And this was one of the few projects that I didn't care how long I was there. I just always remember that I just wanted to do more. How can I be more involved? What can I do? Coming in on the weekends to teach myself the animation toolkits, to try to like work on prototypes and stuff I had ideas for, and it was just that passion was across the entire team. I can't say there was any bad C's, there wasn't any negative Nancy's. I mean, just everybody was there, and obviously in long hours it's going to be a little bit infighting and bickering, but I mean, it was healthy debates and just that passion for the product and the passion for mixed martial arts in general. You know, it wasn't like we were making UFC. You know, like we understood the importance of mixed martial arts. You know, we had people in the studio who were brown belts in judo. I think Vic was like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I think we had a Hapkido guys, and we had dudes of all sorts of disciplines who were on that team. So that's why I always think back to is just like an amazing experience, a bunch of people that I've still, I mean, blessed to have even been around. You know, for me, I'm a kid who got his good enough diploma and just happened to find EA driving by one day in a school bus going like, EA, I didn't know you could work there. And here I was in this awesome project with these superstars, and just like they were treating me as their peers, and I was collaborating and a valued member of the team. So to me, it was just like dream come true, perfect project, and again, lightning in a bottle. Can't say any better.
Were you actually one of the guys that like drove by the building and said, "Hey, that's the EA," and then would like walk in the front door and like, "Can I work here?"
No, I went home and looked it up at least. You know, I went to like Yahoo Jobs at the time, or whatever it was, and they're hiring testers. That's the story. Like I was literally driving a school bus. They called me Otto. I still had the big devil beard, and the kids thought I was this biker. You know, I was driving a school bus. I used to deliver pizzas, so any driving job I could get, and I just happened to take a route that took me by that building, and I said, EA. I was looking for summer work. They were hiring summer testers, so it all kind of fell into place. And you know, I was there 8 years. It's supposed to be a temporary summer job that lasted 8 years.
That's an interesting thing. Is like, I think a lot of people who just play games and don't necessarily follow the industry super close, I think they kind of have this idea in their head that like, not only is EA Sports, they think it's just one thing, but that it's the same people all the time. Where it's like, I do a lot of wrestling game coverage, and there will be people who comment like, "Oh, they need to remaster WWF No Mercy," and it's like, God, the people who made that game are long gone. Like that was 25 years ago. They changed the company name. They don't make games like that anymore. Like people have this set idea, and they don't realize that. Like, I think all of you guys have kind of like not only moved on to different projects, but like some of you guys have moved on to like different lines of work.
So that is true, but I want to be the first one to say that if there was a clear way to have continued doing this job, this was one of those times when I think I could stand flat-footed and say I would have been happy to let this be my forever job.
Yeah.
I would have done this until I was old and gray and they walked me out of the building.
And I think Nick and Jason can attest to it. I threw a hissy fit when we knew it was going to be developed in Canada after, you know, the UFC thing came around, and I tried every which avenue I could to get involved with it. And it was just like, hey, in Canada they have laws. They already have people who do this work. You have to have a special visa. And like I tried every avenue, potentially relocating to stay on this project. That's how much I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. I can't help but point. There's a couple of people that are missing from this conversation. It'd be great to kind of hear from them. But like myself, Victor, Simon, even Travis had opportunities, or at least had conversations about moving to Canada to do it. And it was like not the same. Like that's a good team up there, and they did a good job, but it's not the same as it would have been if we did it. Now Barnes doesn't want.
Look, everybody who knows me knows I'm the most competitive person you're ever going to meet. I will fight to the death on any competition, no matter what it is. And look, after we didn't work on it, I've looked at every UFC, I've looked at every Metacritic rating, and I believe it took 10 years and 4 versions before they get a higher score than us.
Damn.
So, I'm on top of that from my competitive side, and I always say, give me and that team 10 years.
If you had the same 10 years,
I think we would have been all right. So the other thing though that Preston said is, look, Nick, what is your official belt? I don't even know these days. Black belt in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I was fortunate where my father was an instructor for Shotokan karate and judo, so I grew up with that in my life. And then I went on and got a black belt in the Hwarang-do and became an instructor. So it was near and dear to my heart, the whole thing. In fact, some of the animators they wanted. I think I talked about this in my comment. Some of the animators, they wanted to have a little bit more experience, so we had like invite the whole team down, and we did a little bit of not necessarily demonstrations, but some basics about distance and about game planning. And then it was a smaller group that was like, oh, we want to know a little bit more. So we did do some demonstrations, and we showed off some submissions and helped some people understand what it's like. A lot of people think punching is like movie distance, you know, where they're leaping across the screen. And punching is like in that bad breath distance. You're already inside. If you have a real punch, you're inside that uncomfortable North American sort of space of uncomfortability. Yeah. So, and we did that. And then later on, we ended up having some informal MMA training at the gym across the street. So at lunch and after school, or a couple folks. Preston was one of them. And if I and a little bit further down the line, this is like one of the reasons why EA MMA is one of my favorite things. That my proudest and most peak moments as a coach, and that's one of the words that people could call me that I have the most reverence for, because I've known so many good coaches in my life, was three of those guys out of the 4 or 5 that were training with me said, we want to try a tournament, and there's one coming to this gym. And I was like, what? That's in 3 months, and you've never done a sport in your life, much less martial arts, right, Maurice? Maurice had just lost like 100 pounds the year before. He's like, I want to compete. And I was okay.
Maurice and Ronan.
Maurice and Ronan, that's right. And the other kid,
another wrinkle onto this is that we currently hired Maurice at my current company.
Oh, nice.
2 weeks ago.
That's awesome.
Please tell me it's hi. Please tell me I love Maurice.
I will reach out. Yeah.
I'll tell the whole story here, and people can get really bored. So we had 3 months to train. None of these 3 guys had ever competed and had very, very little martial arts experience. Well, none, except for Ronan, who in his childhood took karate in New York or something like that. So we trained for 3 months. It was not just any tournament either. It was the U.S. grappling regional tournament for submission only, no time limit. So once the bell rings, it's not over until somebody gives up. And that's the rule.
That's gnarly.
So I tried to explain that to them, and they're like, let's do it. And we went in there, and those 3 guys, Ronan got first place, Maurice got second place, and Max got third place.
Oh, shit. Division.
And I'll tell you, the only reason why Maurice lost was, one, that dude was an NCAA wrestler, and I'll take this to my grave. Maurice crossed his feet in the rear naked choke position and tapped to an ankle lock because I didn't have enough time to program in separate your feet when you're on the back. That's a normal mistake that people make for years. He was this close to tapping that NCAA wrestler. It still came in second place, though. He stuffed the takedown. So anyway,
I remember that video.
These people
it was like slow motion and walk fast. I remember that to this day.
And I was like, not your feet. My fault. But still, these people were so into it. And they gave me one of the most proud moments of my life in another component, another facet.
And that's the passion. Like the training, a bunch of us also did it. I think we did like 18 months, and that's where we got the feel the fight idea, right? I mean, my fantasy is that I have a controller that has force feedback so that when I'm more tired, it's harder to punch and kick and move, and you can actually fight. But it was knowing that movement, and Nick teaching us and others teaching us that the subtle little movements of how you set up a pass and all those things. And that was like just the passion of the team. Like I don't know how many times you can say that a team got together and did a sport they've never done before because they were so into it.
We'd always talk somebody into like wrestling with us. Like Jacare shows up and like kept the gi in my office.
That's insane. That's Jacare Souza. That's no joke.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
When you talk about like the passion of it and like how all of you guys trained, I have another thing that we'll leap to from here, but I just noticed as a player, just the transition animations and like locking in the submission animations. I remember as a big MMA fan playing EA Sports MMA, I was like, this is what this shit really looks like. This doesn't look like somebody who got a description and then they animated it and it doesn't look right. Like the old PS2 UFC games, I was like, it's so smooth. It's like you're putting the hand on the leg to like pass over. It's like this looks legit.
There were two things that this makes me think of two things. One is a quote that I keep with me all the time, is what Steve Chang told Barnes. Let's get a little bit of thunder here. Steve Chang said just like we were talking about how good we wanted to be and how nervous we were and how stressed out, and he was the GM of Tiburon at the time, and he said, focus on making better fans. And with that conversation was, Barnes and I talked late into the night. He's like, well, what could be the opportunity? And I did that flow chart.
Yep.
See that?
Oh yeah, of course.
It was 11 pieces of paper.
Yeah, one of Nick's famous mind maps. I remember.
I was like, if you're here, then you go here, and then you can do these things unless you counter. But you can sub-counter into these things, and just the flow chart was this big.
Yeah, and so off of that, the two things. One is when Jacare was in, that's when they said, look, chaining submissions is the new thing. He said, I'm setting up a rear naked choke with the idea that he's going to fight it off and I'm going to get an arm bar. And we literally added it after a conversation with Jacare, the chaining of submissions. But on that, when you talk about the flow charts, we talk about Maurice and Simon, some of their first animators on it. We knew that striking was fun. Fighting games, Fight Night proved we weren't worried about striking. That's been proven. So we sat around and said, how do we make the ground game fun? And that was what our first prototype was how do you move into the different positions? How does it seem fair? And our first prototype, I've told the story before. We got a couple of different positions from all the way to mount or maybe to side control, but we high-fived each other because we were like this football studio we knew how to make two people interact on a tackle and blocking. And we high-fived each other because you could move them in all these positions. And we kind of went away and played it some more at night and came back and said, okay, we high-fived each other, but for the wrong reasons. This wasn't fun. Like, we proved we could animate it, but that didn't prove that there was actually a game and a system to it. And that's, coming back to that passion and having those hard conversations with ourselves about, we didn't accomplish anything. So we went back to the drawing board to try to figure out how to make movement on the ground understandable, matter, and all those things. And it was being harsh on ourselves.
All this conversation just goes to show how much goes into these games and even the intricate little details. And I'm gonna pull on something that Preston let me know when we were emailing back and forth was you kind of dropped this tidbit on me that like it did not go over very well when Dana White in the middle of the war on EA sort of thing was going on, that he was just like, they don't know shit about MMA. They don't know what they're talking about. And like, meanwhile, you guys are talking about like training and like some of the team are entering tournaments and we've got black belts and shit. Like, tell me about how that feels to see that in like a headline and you're just going like, oh, he has no idea what he's talking about.
Well, for me, it was Anderson Silva. Do you guys remember? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's an Anderson Silva.
This is breaking. Like, we were sworn to secrecy.
Oh, shit.
On Anderson Silva, yeah.
Well, the Anderson Silva one I'm talking about is he holding up our game.
Yep.
And like, in his locker, and he's like, number one, right here, number one, and puts it, that's what he was playing at home. And yes, that was Anderson Silva. And when the Spider's at the peak of his game, greatest of all time, when he's saying it's number one, that's where whenever Dana's saying, it's competitive, right? So we have to respect he's competitive. We also, we want the UFC license at the same time. It's all those things. For me, it was the Spider going, you guys are number one. I was like, all right, we got something here.
So that's an exclusive. Because when we got that, it would have been like 2010, and he was like in the middle of his run, and he's there, and he's like, number one. This is the number one game, not the other one. Rock'em sock'em robot. Rock'em sock'em. That's what he said.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Sworn to secrecy. I hope the statute of limitations is up and one of these guys doesn't come out. He was a UFC employee at the time.
Well, like, Anderson is no longer with the UFC, and correct me if I'm wrong, all of you guys are no longer with EA anymore, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so this reminds me of the Ric Flair meme when he's going, "Fire me, I'm already fired."
That's right.
Oh,
I think that
my
bothered
goodness.
me most, and I don't know, because the story goes 4 or 5 different ways. Was that if these guys correct me if I'm wrong, he went beating down the wrong door at EA. He was trying to go to the Sim studio to pitch the sports game, and they were just like, "Dude, first off, who are you?" Like, "No, we're not interested in that here. We make the Sims." And I think he took that the wrong way and kind of just Danified it, and that was it.
So he went to Redwood Shores, which is the headquarters of EA, and it's proven out in marketing research. Some people don't always see the difference between EA Sports and EA. So if you want to talk to EA, you go to Redwood Shores. But if you want to talk to EA Sports, you would have had to go to Burnaby at the time, and that's where Steve Chang was. That's where Andrew Wilson was. Andrew Wilson, at that time, he was a blue belt or a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. He was training with Grown Gracie. Like, he would have had the right connection, and eventually that is what happened. Mm-hmm. You go to Redwood Shores and you're going to talk to the Sims. You go to Redwood Shores in like the mid 2000 like 05 or whatever. You're going to talk to the Sims. You're going to talk to the guy for Dead Space and the marketing company. Not even the EA Sports marketing.
Maybe even
that was in Orlando.
Maybe a Need for Speed, but that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, even Need for Speed was either in Guilford or at Black Box in Vancouver. So
yeah, that's true.
Nobody would have known. Yeah.
But that was
like our third goal.
We went to the wrong place. Like, we would have loved to play ball, but
it's always struck me as like
win the UFC license.
Yeah.
So, mission accomplished.
It's always struck me as like there must have been some sort of disconnect, because it's like, EA said that we don't want to do an MMA video game. It's like, why would they say that? Like, what are you talking about? So it's good to hear it directly from you guys what the situation was.
Yeah, I think that was made pretty public too. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we always would have liked it. We just didn't cross paths at the time. And eventually, everybody got into the right hand.
Yeah.
I remember that day. It was like 10:30 in the morning, and I think Victor texted me, and he's like, UFC just bought Strikeforce. And I'm like, and I was like, what was that, 2 or 3 months after we launched? And I was like, oh my God. I said, all right, it's either good or bad. And then I started hearing the news about how Dana and Andrew started talking. So I'm like, all right, that's probably good. So it was good for the company.
That will give me a jumping off point to jump to one of the questions that I have written down here, which I mentioned in the Life and Death of EA Sports MMA video that Jeff Ecker, who was an EA guy as well, I think I called him an associate editor in the video, because that's what the article I read called him, and he left a comment saying, "I don't even know what that means." So I'm like, I'm only working with the information I got.
Sounds like
But
you heard from Jeff on your article?
He commented on the video, yeah.
Oh,
awesome.
Is he the white whale? Is he
I
like?
miss that guy so much.
He's in there. You can find him, but
I'll find him.
At some point, he had said to the press or somebody
that we're working on the second version.
Yeah, that there was going to be a sequel.
It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when.
Yeah, so I want to ask you guys, what did you ever know of a sequel? Preston gave me some details about this in an email, but I'll let all you guys kind of talk about it. Just tidbits, tidbits.
I guess, what did I know? I know that Victor, the small team of us, Victor, Nick, and Preston, and everybody, the team moved over, right? We had started already prototyping what we want. Yeah, again, we ship something. There's something that's driving all of us crazy, and we started our process. And so when you're developing games, we talk about that, and you'll hear this from other people. There's those moments when you know you have something in the office. It's that all of a sudden people start gathering around, and when you get the gather around, you know you're onto something. And we had that early on. We had it later. I mean, we had our Thursday night fights where we got anybody, it was open 2 to 4 hours of just, let's have mayhem and scream at each other because, this punch is too
broken
powerful.
And you're cheating.
Yeah, this is broken. And we basically used it as a way to figure out exploits, and then we'd go tune the game the next day and then come back at it and really get everybody's feedback.
But I had to move it from Fridays to Thursdays because everybody was complaining about not being able to go home on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Because we were staying late, just going at it with each other, trying to make the game better. And there were times where we would go, that pendulum swung during development, where it was, okay, this is overpowered or this wasn't. But that prototype, we had already started prototyping. I was excited about it. And the other thing I was going to say is when you're sequeling a game, you have a moment during development where you're like, well, the one we shipped is inferior. It's the only one I can play at home still as a fan. But it's technically inferior because we've added this twist or we've done this better. And we felt like we were already there. We were headed towards that way. We had big plans for furthering our career mode, obviously continuing online and live broadcast. The gameplay itself, we already had a prototype that we felt better about.
Yeah, it was coming. It was coming along. He didn't say the wrong thing. He just wasn't. He said the right thing, but we would have, as an entertainment company, we want to kind of hold that close to the vest for announcements. Yeah.
And the truth is, EA got used. I don't know if they are now, but they used to get really up in arms and worked up about if you mentioned there was another Madden coming. I'm going to give you a news flash. There's another Madden coming, right?
Unofficially announced. Unofficially, nothing confirmed, but there's another Madden.
Well, I remember real specifically. Again, the way it works is generally on a good development cycle, which I think ours was pretty good. I think we did delay a little bit. We had an initial point we wanted to launch, and
internally we had an aggressive day.
Yeah, we had when we did launch, though, there's that window of when you've submitted to first party for approval that you're kind of waiting, and QA's doing their thing, and there's a little bit of bug fixing. The game's pretty much locked, and I think within the 2 or 3 week turnaround from us being done and it getting the green light and going live, I think we'd already prototyped. I think what we were calling maybe the Vitor Belfort mode of the locomotion, you were actually able to walk and strike at the same time, which you couldn't do with the original.
Yeah.
And that was just already 2 weeks after we'd shipped. We were already making improvements to the locomotion system and enabling, I think, the ability for different transitions and stuff on the ground. And it had already been upgraded even just 2 weeks after launch.
Wow.
He's talking about some of the arguments that we had. It was what's the power of the full mount position? And my philosophy is that it's not a very powerful spot, and what you'll find out is that people at a certain level get in there, or once they're there, they'll try to make something happen right away. And we would argue about, oh no, it's the most powerful, and it's not the most powerful. It's eminently defendable. Oh yeah, just sit on my chest. Just sit on my chest right now. Lay down there in the hallway at work. That was one of the things that we were able to work on, was all the different transitions out of that. And I remember it was the art director, Tony, and we were at the gym, and I'm like, let's go. Do everything you can. All you need to do is try to hit me. Well, I don't want to hit you, Nick. All right, well, just slap me, Tony. Okay, I get it. We're going to change the enemy.
And I guess that's the best way to find out, is you just got to prove it on the spot.
Because that was the beauty of it. Because the other thing is, Nick talks about that, and from a design standpoint, this is what we argued. We said, okay, in full guard, we kind of said, here's defense, you have great defense on your back and really good submission, but your strikes are weak. And we kind of worked every position and said, what is it really good at and what is it weak at? And that's how we kind of balanced it and had those arguments and those conversations of and then, what is the full reversal, what is the ways out and the escapes and all those different things. But that's the way we approached it, is each position had it. From the clinch also, not just on the ground, right?
One of my favorite parts about that, and this was a huge part of Jason's role, was the gameplay. like, it's always been a quest of mine to explain. It's not two meatheads just slinging fists at each other. It's like, all right, I'm going into a fight and this person is taller, stronger, faster, more of a grappler, more of a striker. Okay, how do I have to prepare to get ready for that? And then, the fight's actually quite short. If you remember playing, like, the career mode, you had to prepare for that next fight. Building on that for the sequel was something that we were talking about. But I always loved the idea that the game plan matters, and you could prep for the next guy or go all in on one thing. You could beat Chuck Liddell where he just, you know what he's going to do, but good luck stopping it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 10 out of 10 on that thing. Or you plan exactly for that fight, and then you work that plan. And if it doesn't work, you're kind of screwed there too. I love the thought. That's when people talk about chess match. It's not just about submission, counter submission. It's a lot about what's my plan right now and how do I make that the thing that's happening. It's cool. Anyway, good stuff. That's one of my favorite parts. One of my favorite career modes in all sports. I mean, I'm biased, but I'm also honest, and I'm right.
Yes. Yes. Well, there's so many things, like, it killed me in the video that you fought someone 6 times in a row. We were doing 6 times in your career. We were doing everything. That one hurts still. I died a little bit inside. It was not supposed to be that way. 3 at most, and
yeah.
The other
clearly you're just remembering wrong because it was perfect.
Hey, to be clear, that was something I had come across, was like fighting guys too many times. But the specific thing that I was complaining about was, like, early on I fought that one guy who was like 3-4, and I finished him in the first round, and then the next fight they were like, we got an opponent, and it was that fucking guy again. I was like,
yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So, and the other thing, from career mode, we wanted to have you go through, like, not just, Strikeforce, right? That's why we created the other things, but we wanted a world of MMA going on. Because, like I said, Fight Nights, there's been fantastic versions of Fight Nights and some that I don't like, but fighting games and sports games, I love Holyfield on the Genesis, but it's always you just climbing a ladder, and that's not what it is, right? There's people going up in the ranks with you, people are retiring, and so we wanted to create this idea that there was other fighters out there that were on a collision course with you that you didn't know about, and that was part of the career. I was going to say the other thing is, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was just, the emergent drama of sports games is one of the best hooks in video games. But you need to know a little bit about the context. So seeing that other guy be an up-and-comer, or knowing that you picked a style that's not going to be a good matchup for who ends up being at the top of the heap, the gatekeeper for that league that you picked, that if you were aware enough to do that versus just like plowing through the next fighter, the game becomes actually really dramatic, which is fun.
I will even do that one better. Is this was the first MMA game that I played to where, like, maybe I was focusing on, like, okay, this is going to be my jiu-jitsu guy, and, like, my striking is going to suck, and I'm going to try and submit everybody. But there would whatever style I was choosing, there would always be somebody I would get matched up against, and I would go, fuck, like, this is not going to be good.
You're like, oh no.
Yeah,
that dude has my number.
And like with prior MMA games, which I was also a fan of, so I'm like not trying to bury anybody, I always felt like, nah, I got him. But this was the first one where I was like, okay, I really got to be careful and like stick to it, or else this is going to fall apart very quick.
Yeah, that is so much like real fighting too. You're like, oh, that guy actually, he circles to my left so fast. And my left is the bad side, and he knows it, and now I'm scared of it. So now that's all I'm thinking. Oh, everything's ruined.
Yeah.
See Michael Bisping and Dan Henderson, right? Circling to the wrong side.
Yeah, circling to the wrong side. Oh.
I want to... Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say also is, on the gameplay part of it, so I actually shaved my head like Chuck Liddell to go watch him live, drove to Atlanta with Rob Hyder and Jason Vandiver, who works on WWE, and has for a long time, one of our best designers on our game. and watched him get knocked out by Rashad Evans live, which was painful. But that was one of the things that, when we talk about gameplay, one of the things that we always did was we'd ask the fighters we'd ask them a couple things, and one of them was, explain how a flash knockout happens. And we'd done our research. People have been hit in our studio before, right? And so no. But the thing is that you never just get flash KO. You were always, like, when you watch Chuck get knocked out in that position, he was in a full uppercut when he gets flash KO. He's not like this. He's not covered up. And so, we built every one of our animations. We tagged specifically and had these, these curves of when you were most vulnerable based off of what you were doing. And every fighter said that's how flash KOs. And so that's how we determined when a flash KO. And it was on you. That's, if you were the jiu-jitsu guy and you got caught, you got caught.
Every game has an element of risk-reward. Sometimes it's long, slow risk, Civ 4 risk-reward or chess risk-reward. But if I remember, Barnes, didn't you tune with Simon those curves by hand?
Every one of those,
so each frame has its own one. And the risk-reward in our game happened in 0.25 seconds. But it was there, and everybody knew it.
And that's why, if you lost, it was on you. That was one of our goals from the beginning, right? It wasn't bad luck or this guy. No, if you got caught, whether you got caught in a submission or you got knocked out, that's your own fault. That was one of our goals.
We were sold before sold.
It wasn't a random number generator, I think, is what you're saying more simply. We weren't just rolling a dice on a strike and said, hey, this is the one that's going to do it. Like, there was frames.
But it came down to perfect timing, right, Preston?
I remember we did one internal, we were doing an internal fight league. Yeah, and I think Barnes was the current heavyweight champion, and I think it was the first strike of the first round or something. And of course, QA was all up in arms, like, how was that possible? He's cheating, or it's like, no, you can see in the replay, the guy was coming in with a swinging hook, and Barnes just nailed him with an uppercut. I mean, right in the sweet spot of the window. Just
we were doing an internal live broadcast and test, and we were about 2 minutes, 4 minutes delayed, something like that. I don't know exactly.
Right. Yeah, live wasn't ever really live. It's what is live really? But
so I went down second floor. We did it. We touched gloves, and then first punch knocked him out. And then I'm up on we were on the sixth floor. I'm on the sixth floor before the live broadcast starts, hanging out with everybody else. They're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Just watch."
That you talk about.
Refresh my beverage.
Sure.
But But we should tell stories about hanging out with fighters in the lunch party. Maybe Madden Weekend.
Yes.
What's the Madden Weekend story? Should we tell that now, or do we wait?
No, let's wait for Nick. That's a pretty chaotic story.
I'll throw in about the risk reward system that there was two specifically that my friend and I would always use when we played online and we were grinding up the belt levels to get the trophies. We knew, don't ever throw the step in overhand hook, because if you get caught during that's the most powerful strike, but if you get caught, you're dead. So it was we just knew it wasn't worth it. And even knowing that, we would still throw it sometimes, and then because we'd both be playing in different rooms, you would just hear the other guy go "fuck," and we knew it was because you couldn't resist the urge to throw it. And then the other one we would do was, if you would throw a low kick and you were too far away, you would spin through it and finish the animation. So we would play online, and we knew that if we would throw that kick, the guy would rush us because it was the auto takedown because your back was turned. So we would take several steps back, so we were far away enough that he would have to step in to go for the takedown. So we would throw the kick as bait and then press square to do that guillotine parry. And it worked 9 out of 10 times. And most of the time you would get someone in that guillotine and they would just quit. And it was that's even better than a tap because you knew you were screwed.
That's the chess match right there.
Yeah. We figured that out. It was I'm going to get him. He's not going to know that I know he's going to shoot. And we would get him every time. The risk reward on this game I will put against any combat sports game that's ever been out there. 100%.
That's awesome. And like I said, we heard it from fighters. So Preston, you remember the night we put in the takedown on the spinning kick? Do you remember that on Thursday Night Fights? So Simon and I put that in. And
specifically, there were so many of them though, and I to be fair, a lot of times I was there taking the notes, you know. So a lot of times I didn't get in on the action.
But was that with the like the side kick, back kick, and the takedown from behind? That one, or
when you kicked from too far out and missed, you spun, right, because you're putting into it.
Okay,
and
that one.
If you timed it right, you could take them down and drive them. So, you know, we found like this was, you know, we wanted to penalize you for taking stupid kicks from a distance. So Simon put that takedown in, and then I don't remember who first pulled it off in a fight, but like that was up in arms. Like then everybody's mad.
Got to be Schwally, right? Got to be Tim Schwally.
Taken down, and then you go, wait, yeah, because that was one of my favorite moves that we added though. And I'd love to hear how you used it, set somebody up with it, which is also brilliant.
Yeah, we would do it as bait, and that was a useful takedown, because if I remember correctly, it dropped you like straight into like half mount. So you were just one transition away from like major danger if they don't know what they're doing. Because if they knew what they were doing, it was like, okay, well, this is just as good as anything else.
But it was getting that ground game right. It really was.
Yeah. It's semi-related. I don't know if we were going to bring it up, but I know it's a tough spot for a lot of people, or a sore spot, I should say, is the sticks versus buttons. You know, and what always drove me crazy is like, you know, people were like, well, on the ground game, the buttons aren't real. Like, I like UFC because I have to do the quarter circles and it feels like I'm moving with motion. But it's like, I always felt like, but I don't feel like tapping a button is like striking. So like I could see the argument, but you know, to me, I like the kind of that ground system. And Barnes, maybe you could touch on kind of some of the prototypes, or you know, maybe what we've been, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, you in your video, I don't remember your exact words, but we couldn't decide. It wasn't that. It was the philosophy we had was we thought that we would get fight night players who were the stick fighters, and then we would get UFC from THQ who were button. And so what we were trying to do is make sure that we got everybody. What we didn't want is someone who was coming over from THQ's UFC version going, I won't play because I don't have buttons. You know, ultimately I would have stuck with sticks as our striking, but we felt like that was the risk that we were taking. Something that never shipped, and I wish it would have, still to this day, is our initial first-time user experience we actually had in the build. We just didn't have a polish, and we removed it. It was inspired by Halo design, which was we started you off as boss in your career mode, kind of like where we cut to him talking, but we actually started you on as boss in the corner, kind of bloodied, so we could show off the graphics. And your corner man saying, you're going to drop him, he's ready to go. We had this woozy fighter come out. And if you threw a punch with your stick, we just kept you on stick controls. And if you threw a punch with your buttons, we just didn't even tell you. We were like, oh, you're a button puncher. And all we said was, you know, knock him out. And then honestly, if nothing happened in 15 seconds, then he could punch you a couple times, but if nothing happened, then the AI just took over and knocked him out because you're not, you know, we have to accommodate stupid users all the time. That's what works. I was talking about this today with my current company, and I was saying, the sad part is I wish the video game consumers, the gamers out there, knew how much development time is spent on preventing stupid things. And if we could all agree to not do the dumb things, every game you've ever played would be 10 times better easily.
5 more features. 5 more features.
Nick heard how many times I could get a damn NASCAR out of the wall. I'm sure, I don't know how many more features would have been developed. I found a way to do it every time.
God, we spent so much time working on these horrible parts that people are going to do dumb stuff with.
Yeah. We would, at the end, we'd start to like, punt the jackass bugs. Like, yes, if you're trying to be a jackass, you can do that.
And sometimes
you can't do that all the time, but towards the end, you're like, whatever, man. You want to be a jackass? Go ahead.
Yeah, don't be a jackass online was the rule, but sometimes you're like, you paid $60, I don't care. If you need to be a jackass, be a jackass, as long as it wasn't, you know, something against someone online. But man, that kills me. So that's actually what happened with sticks and buttons. I think sticks we should have stuck with in hindsight, you know, kind of like, but that's where.
I think nowadays we might have been able to make a better conversation, be like, this is the way our game is played.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot more allowances for people following a certain type of thread. Accessibility is very important, but I think you can also kind of lean into, this is the way our game is played.
Yeah.
You can make that case. Back then, accessibility was less about giving everybody the ability to play versus giving every ability to play.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
You mentioned Souls earlier, and about the accessibility thing, and just saying like this is how our game is played. Every time From Software puts out a new game, all the headlines come out like, should they have an easy mode? And they never put it in. And now Elden Ring is the biggest selling game they've ever had. So like they're sticking to their guns, saying this is what we do, and like even a broader audience now is going like, oh yeah, this is what they do, and we love it. So just having that freedom, I guess.
Discuss is a great link.
Yeah. This is a good one. I play Elden Ring a lot. I've probably got about 200 hours in it right now.
Yeah.
It does have an easy mode. Nobody knows this. It's called go do something else and come back and kick that guy's ass.
Yeah, how about it?
Because the game teaches you how to be a better player, and you level up. Mm-hmm. So like you're almost getting like 3 improvements for 1 when you're doing something else, and then you come back. Like the whole, but it's skews the initial concept of what gameplay, accessibility, and easy is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel
I don't
like
play any of those games, but we're in a world now where it's like gimme, instant gratification, like, comments, likes. So to tell somebody to slow down and be patient, it's almost a foreign concept, I think, on maybe the earlier demographic of gamer these days.
So this is where Nick and I have had this conversation. I mean, we talk. I don't say we still talk daily, but damn near daily. And sometimes we just have long design discussions and the industry. And part of it is, for me, is if you look at how once we got on the consoles, I think if you go back and play some PlayStation 2 games, they're pretty hard. Like Resident Evil, I remember on PlayStation 1 was a hard game.
Yeah, talk about hard on purpose. Like
hard on
weird,
purpose.
Goofy foot controls. That's like on purpose hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see, I always say Ubisoft with Prince of Persia, which I love the Prince of Persia games, but kind of like the goal of not dying. And then auto running and, Assassin's Creed, which does amazing things, and you can climb walls as if it's just breathing. And games got easier and easier, and we make these games, to your point, Preston, gimme, easier, and then all of a sudden Souls comes out, and everybody's like, whoa, this game's so different. I'm like...
Yeah, not really. I think the Prince of Persia game is a really good example.
These games come out, and everybody's kind of, shocked by them and go to them. It's because they are different, and we played games for a challenge. That's why we play video games. It's the challenge, the discovery, and I think sometimes we've lost that art.
I think so. Just to continue our private conversation, Barnes. We were talking about Prince of Persia a couple of weeks ago, and I know we've mentioned it before, and it sat with me for a little while. And it's not that game was easy. In fact, I would say that it was actually quite hard.
You had to block.
But easy. But it was easy to try again. It wasn't like I had to go all the way back to the beginning of the level. It was easy to try again and again and again and learn the pattern and then do it. The game was still very hard. And you did something in your eminent brilliance. You brought in the rematch button. You remember? Like, oh no, I'm not going back to the fucking start screen. Restart this shit and get me back in there.
That's right.
That is a competitive mind. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, we all know what we want to do. We want to do this again.
Yeah, there's no reason to go
through the menu.
Exactly. Yes. I'll tell you another one. So Rob Hyder, our lead producer on it, was playing way too much World of Warcraft, and he knows that. I called him out, and I told him that. Because when we were designing it, I was, again, referencing Holyfield on the Genesis and the greatest of all time on the Genesis, and they had some career mode things and other games, and part of it was Prince of Persia. And I said, because we're borrowing and stealing from every great game, And I told him, you need to go play other games so we can have these conversations. And he came back mad at me about Prince of Persia because he had to hold block. I remember that. I remember him being mad that it required him to hold the block button at times. So,
that's amazing.
He's got a different genre, that's it.
Yeah. Let's now that everybody's back, let's hear this Madden weekend story that was teased a minute ago.
Nick, you want to go first?
So I only remember the first part.
Okay.
Preston, were you there? I was.
I didn't get to go into the cool stuff.
You didn't get to go in? You know what we're going to do? We're going to spend a lot of time talking about live podcast. Okay, so what was it? It was Madden launched down in Miami.
Yep.
And we all got a bus. And
Yes.
Jessica got us a bus, and we all went down. And we were like, we had a cooler, and we had a couple of beverages. Rob was reading his science fiction book. Sorry.
Maybe some energy drinks.
Yes, maybe some energy drinks. And we got there, and they had a what they say like a behind closed doors room for us, which in this case was at the top floor of those Clevelander, if I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
Overlooking South Beach. So, and if you wanted to come and see the game, we had a very, very. Did we play a video or did we play we have playable? I think it was actually just a video.
We had a playable because we had some Xbox 360 problems that day.
That's right. Oh my gosh, the cable. Okay, so Dale and I, who was the GM at the time, we went in and we started to set everything up, and we were missing cables, and the sun is still up, but it's getting dark. What did we do? I don't remember exactly what happened. We called somebody, Carl.
Carl came down, drove 4 hours in a panic, and brought the right cables. We had a development Xbox 360 and brought it down. This was our big reveal. Like Madden, we be part of Madden Bowl and the big reveal. And this was the first time we were showing a little bit closed doors and fighters. Got to see it for the first time. There was
an invite list with a lot of our own signed fighters and other fighters that we hadn't signed yet, and football players from Madden Bowl and from the Super Bowl. My favorite part, though, was actually I had a couple of favorite parts, but Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield walks in. He's got like 2 or 3 buddies with him, and it's funny. You don't really realize how big that dude is until you're standing with him. Like I've spent a lot of time, as have we all, with like football players and stuff. Boxers, they could be any size, but the champ, he was like a head taller than me.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my god, and he's like, what are we doing up here? I was like, we're showing off a fighting game. He's like, what is it, that MMA stuff? And I was like, he's like, that's pretty cool. You want to play? No. Really nice guy. Few words. But I was like, I don't get starstruck too often, but I was starstruck. And after having dealt with Josh Thompson and Jason Mayhem Miller earlier that day, it was a different level. It was a different level of celebrity.
Yeah. So I got 2 stories about that. So I'm sure that you've seen our prank with Mayhem Miller.
Yes.
Please. All right. So the whole story on that is Rob Hyder's favorite fighter is Mayhem Miller. So Nick, Victor, and I brainstormed this idea to run this prank, and none of us have met Mayhem. And he pulls up the next day in the morning, and I'm like scouting him. And I run downstairs, and I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I'm the creative director. Your attributes suck. We're going to fake a fight. Let's do this. And he's like, awesome, I'm in. And then I run away. And then,
no, you said, it's okay if you push me.
Yeah. Like, you can, like, go at me. Like, go at me. Like, it's okay. And so that's how we staged the whole thing. We set him up. If you really watch the video, you can see the people who were in and the people who were terrified that a real fight was breaking out. And security, we were on the Madden floor. Security was called because they thought, like, they didn't know who was in. They thought Madden employees were about to have this big brawl. They were almost calling the police. It was awesome. So then, to prank him back, and Nick, if you remember this, Press, if you remember this in that version, this was the first time he was going to see himself really with his face in the game. we made it so that he could only throw weak slaps. And when he went to do a takedown, he did like a pirouette.
Most Simon animated the pirouette.
Yes. So he's all set up and his camera's on him and he gets ready to fight and he can't even fight. And watching his face getting pranked back was absolutely hysterical. So that was awesome.
And it was like, fabulous!
No, that's right. I forgot about
That's amazing.
So that was hilarious. But so Dan Henderson's there. And, you know, I'm a stat nerd, history buff on MMA. I've looked at everything. And
Dan Henderson is awesome.
Dan Henderson's an awesome, awesome guy. But, so I think it's Victor and Rocky are talking to Dan, and Dan's looking, and he has terrible ratings on submission. And, so they go, who's in charge? He goes, who's in charge of ratings? And they go, this guy, and point to me. So Dan Henderson comes, and he's like this close to me, face to face. I'm face to face with Dan Henderson, and he's literally staring the hell out of me. And he goes, why'd you make my submission so bad? I said, well, you've never attempted a submission attempt in a single fight. He goes, okay. I said, I don't know if you're good or not. You haven't proven it. He goes, yeah. I said, but I will tell you this. You have the strongest right hand in the chin in the game. He goes, okay, and slaps me on the shoulder. We're good. This guy's good, and walks away. And I'm like, oh my God. I thought I was going to get knocked out. I thought I was going to feel the right hand of Dan Henderson. I honestly swear to God thought I was getting knocked out by Dan Henderson that night. But he was okay with it.
That's a good trade-off. I mean, it's realistic. We didn't really see him go for submissions.
No.
And in his last fight ever, it's an interesting stat. The last strike Dan Henderson ever threw in his career was a rolling thunder somersault kick at Michael Bisping. Who knows? Like, he must have known ahead of time. Like, I'm gonna do a somersault kick right before the bell. Like, because why not?
This is for you, Barnes.
Yeah. So now you have to go through somehow retroactively and up his striking just a little bit for that rolling thunder.
Yeah. He's got to learn it at what camp did he learn it at? That's the question.
Yeah. Preston, I want to spend a lot of time now on the live broadcast function and mode, feature, call it what you will, of EA Sports MMA. And for the viewer or listener, depending on how this gets released, probably both ways, run us through real quick just what the hell live broadcast was.
Oh man, live broadcast was, I think, state of the art at the time, and I don't know how many secrets I can reveal, but I do know there was some backstage access through the Xbox that had to be approved. There were secret code names. I mean, it was a wild time. They needed some sort of access to the hardware to be able to pull such a feature off. But no, first off, there we go. Say something.
It may have been the only title. It may still be the only title that, and this is completely unknown, booted up a second executable off the disc. Really? Yeah.
For layman's out there, what the hell does that mean?
So the computer program that you start for your game is different when you go to live broadcast, so that the live broadcast can work. The reason why is because it is a security nightmare to make it correct, and that is something that Xbox wanted to heavily avoid. So it was well done. Who was that? Dan Beacons and Neil Doe. They did a really, really good job on it, and it still gets called out every once in a while. I worked at Microsoft for a few years after my time at EA, and every once in a while it still comes up like, oh yeah, that's right, we did that thing together. But that was atypical, I think is how we might put it.
Yeah, I remember that detail always stuck in my mind. I can't remember the exact code word for it, but I remember hearing the code word, Diet Pepsi or something like that. It was something weird. Like, what does that even mean? And it meant something to somebody. Maybe it was the Orange Playbook or something, or I don't know what it was. But yeah. So anybody didn't know, live broadcast was basically taking the fight card feature that we had, but then putting in the ability for a live broadcast team to actually comment on the fights as they were happening. So they would call you out specifically. From the design standpoint, Barnes, I'm sure you're involved with it in some capacity, being creative director. You can talk more to like the ideas and concepts behind it. But just the idea that there was going to be these fight blogs behind it, and to have, you know, these hype videos that were going to play. So really putting like the personalization into it. It was just more than like being on a stage and being live where people could see this thing happening like a real live fight, but the personalization behind it.
Oh, what do we have
there's
here?
More than one of these, but this is the Shark Tooth Award that we got for live broadcast.
Oh, wow.
Yep. All right.
That's cool as hell.
Tiburon.
Give your Shark Tooth for the prank, because I can bust that out if you need it.
and what are the
There's
Shark
prank.
Tooth Awards?
There's the prank.
So,
Amazing.
When we got this, everybody was like, who would want to watch somebody else play video games?
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when we started this, when Neil Doe like spec'd out the architecture for it, he told me when we launched, he's like, don't forget that when we started this, Netflix was still sending stuff to us in envelopes. So like the streaming technology hardly existed. So the streaming technology that existed for live broadcast to allow thousands and thousands of people to watch other people play video games was not the same technology we would use today, but was quite exquisite the way it was deterministic. It was basically replaying the game on everybody's box. So, I mean, talk about like things ahead of their time and really complicated. That stuff right there.
And the fact that we had a radio booth in the studio.
That's right, from Game Show. It never would have worked if we didn't have that. Yeah.
Right. And
oh my God,
live commentators. You know, like Preston said, we had your hype video. That was part of it because we wanted someone who was watching. If you didn't know who was fighting, we wanted that little bit of connection that you could have with that fighter, and that's where the idea of the hype video came from.
I remember watching the live broadcast back in the day, and I never, like, as they were happening, and I never got to participate in any of them, but I remember watching them being like, this is insane that, like, this is happening right now. And I remember, like, the commentary being really cool. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys is, like, why do you think no one is doing this now? Like, is with the way the technology has come across, it should be easier, right? And it was clearly a badass feature back then. Like,
don't give away the secrets, because I'll tell you, the best video game community I'd ever been part of was the community that created themselves in live broadcasts and fight cards. You could show up and you could go into fight cards and you could fight in a fight card, but some people would spin up fight cards as fight camps, and they would teach you how to fight in each one of the 4 fights. And I've never seen anything like that before. Yeah. And on the web and on all the forums, there would be like, hey, I'm going to have a striking clinic. Come join my fight card. And then people would go through and you'd get on mic and you would talk about how to play the game. I've never seen a more supportive group of gamers helping gamers, like in real time. You know, like that was something that was amazing. And being able to watch that, I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool. I was not, I'll be honest, like I ran that feature all the way from the beginning, and I was like, I can make this work, but I'm not sure how many people are going to like it. And I don't know how popular it was. I mean, ultimately the game struggled with a lot of audience issues, but the people that showed up to that feature were the people that, I mean, I'll make games for. Like I said, I would have made games for the rest of my life.
They had like online leagues. I mean, they were doing like these different leagues and having their own champions. So like, it was really merging how I think live broadcasts work. Because I think, you know, to Nick's point is, there was an idea like, hey, we're going to go to the forums. I think we're going to find some people. Somehow we're going to extract who would be fighting. And I think just through time we refined that process. I don't think there was a live chat at first, but then there was a live chat on the website, to where we started pulling people more from there who were interacting during the fights. We were just calling people in like, hey, do you want to fight? We got an opening. So come on in. You're on the 9 o'clock show. And just evolving that process over time. Yeah.
Is that you, Preston? Were you the
a lot of that, man.
Were you the Joe Silva?
I've lost a lot of this hair because of it, I think. You know, working in any live process, and kind of to bring it back to your question, you know, working in a live broadcast environment is hard. It's stressful. I mean, there's so many times we're at 8:59 and we go to hit the button and it doesn't work. And, it's 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. There's not a single engineer in the building, so we're going down to the server room. We're hitting a couple reset buttons. We're pulling cables into different, routers and stuff, just trying to get the connection back up. And, I mean, as fun as it was a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. And, when you're behind it doing it, there's still an exhilaration of the show. Like, I still love that aspect, the prep for it, the lead up to it. We're here, we're live, we're doing it. Oh my God! And then when it's done, it's like, thank God. Oh God, we got to do this again in 2 days. So to answer it, that's probably a lot of why it's not done.
When Dale and I plotted out like the first 6 months on my whiteboard of like, he's like, here's what it could be, and I'm like, all right, let me think about it. And 30 minutes later, I walked over to his office. I was like, that's a lot of people. Like, we won't be able to. Like, I don't know how to actually do that. Yeah. And he's like, well, who's your go-to team? I was like, I need people that can do all sorts of things. So, Preston Dollinger, Travis Hill, Jeff Eckert was in there for a little while, and Victor. But Preston and Travis did the vast majority of all that stuff. And yeah, and even now, like Travis will say that was some of his most fulfilling work of all time. While he was finishing, because he worked in comic books, he would work through the night and then do his comic book work and then sleep in my office until the next live broadcast thing, and then go to work and film those cold intros with Brian, with Dickerman, and
that's amazing. That's
still
burning at both ends.
Still friends with the guys from that some of your last champions too. Remember, we kind of made them league owners and stuff like that.
Stick Style and King Satan, those guys, yeah. But yeah, Travis, to bring Travis back in, definitely. I mean, that man deserved a million kudos. I mean, he worked his tail off and just a creative genius. And the thing I love most about Travis is he was always up to try something. Like, hey, I'm not sure I agree with it, Preston, but let's go with it. Let's go for it. Let's do it, and just how silly can we be? And, and again, I just loved how that evolved. I think it started very serious. Like, it's going to be a league. We're going to have champions. Right. And then once we saw the community kind of was going more towards, they were running the leagues themselves. Like, well, this is great. We could just kind of work with them. We can kind of insert some humor and a little bit of kind of like silliness behind the scenes and kind of tie it all together into this live broadcast package.
Yeah, it's
now you know what I'm doing is I'm looking for those videos.
They're up. I uploaded all of them. I have all but maybe like 10 that I was able to get on this. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember when I was making my video, I was trying to find like archived versions of those, and I couldn't find them. And I was like, I wonder if these were like, if there was a mandate that was like, that shit's over, pull it down. I was like, where are all of these?
I think we kind of did it roguelike. I think, that they're there. I don't think anybody complained about it, but, you should be able to find it. If you look for EA MMA live broadcast, they should brought up. I know I made a playlist, so everything's in a single playlist. Everyone that I could get a hold of. Like I said, there was probably, I don't know, 6 to 10 that weren't in there. Somewhere it wasn't on the disc I got, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent weeks uploading those things. I remember.
When I think about like how much pressure must have been on and what like a nail biting scenario that must have been, I think about how like being that, and I guess you kind of alluded to maybe live is in air quotes, but you guys these fights are coming together, but you kind of have to count on the fact that somebody's connection is not going to drop. Because then you have nothing to show people, so that's got to be a nightmare.
It's another thing too to kind of allude to. Yeah, we had substitutes. We always had people, as alternates, and if they didn't get in that week, they were head of the line. The next week, make sure we got them in there. And we had a steady set of regulars who at any time, like, all right, Chris, you're going in. And people complain, oh, he gets to fight again. It's like, well, yeah, he's available, his connection's good, and he's there when we need him. So of course we're gonna plug him in when we need to, but. It kind of touches on something that I wanted to bring up. I know that the technology, Nick might be able to talk to it a little better than I, but I do know that our server process was a little more advanced than just a peer-to-peer connection because we had these large, massive fight cards that had potentially up to 8 people that could have gone for as much as 80 minutes or longer in that championship rounds. I believe our servers were a little more expensive to set up because we had to understand more than just peer-to-peer. I don't know, Nick, you could talk more to that or...
Yeah, so... If I could remember it directly, it was peer-to-peer-to-peer to server. network. You remember we had like the special box, which was a Dev 360 kit at the time, and so player A, player B would get together. They would only match make with the special box, and then that box itself would connect to the server that had the special security on it, because we were running everything was special executable of the game, so that Microsoft at the time or Sony at the time knew what game was being played, and then had to push all the inputs out so that the game played the same way for everybody. Yeah, we had I wanted to gold plate it and put it under glass. It was like this cruddy gray Xbox 360. Did you see? I sent you guys the link to Barnes.
See it? I was laughing.
Is that something that should I cut something in here?
Yeah.
Did you hear what Barnes did for the next live broadcast?
No. Did he shave his head?
I've been there, done that.
No, Mo!
Is he stalking Fedor again for fighting tips?
No more than usual.
Well, what'd he do?
If you haven't watched it, I will say that it's Travis put together. There was a creative player giant teddy bear tattoo that probably Travis made, and that because we thought it was funny that the MMA fighter had this giant teddy bear. So in my hype video, Travis is actually drawing a full size teddy bear. I'm like over a chair, full size teddy bear in like one of our little one-on-one rooms, and two people walked up, never seen them, probably like in the company, and they walked in and opened the door. They were supposed to have a one-on-one there, and he's drawing a full-size teddy bear on my back. Like, that's just an odd thing to see at work. And they came in, I said, "Get out of here." This guy ran away, terrified at what they had seen. Can't blame him.
It's the Area 51.
Naked from the waist up, leaned over his chair, drinking root beer out of the side of his mouth.
Those MMA guys are doing some weird shit.
The best part was that, I don't know, was it Travis that put the tattoo sound in?
Yes,
it was
with
a
the
Crayola
tattoo
marker.
sound. So
That was Travis's creativity. I love that stuff. Just those little sound effects he'd find. We're scouring freesounds.com basically. There was zero budget, at that point, for the feature. So it was just like, what can we do?
Yeah. There's a picture in there of you with Fedor. You coaching Fedor from the launch party.
Yes.
Which is, whenever people ask for like a weird story about you or two truths and a lie, I talk about that day because I went to go to see Randy with Dale, and he lived in an apartment in Beverly Hills, and we did the event at was it in Hollywood?
Universal's,
Universal.
Hollywood area.
And so Barnes coached Fedor, and I coached Randy. And we split up that night. And I was kind of bummed because I was like, I'm a big Fedor fan. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Randy too, but we had met Randy
seen
before.
Randy multiple times.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, that's cool. You can go ahead and do that one. I'll go do this one. We get lost, and we end up walking through this neighborhood. Now it's Beverly Hills, so it's not that it's not dangerous, but it's dark, so we're lost. And when we get in, we meet, we sit down. We've got this big, beautiful Beverly Hills apartment. We kind of sit down. We start playing. I have the Xbox under my arm. We plug it in, and I am legitimately coaching him because I know that Fedor's got that overhand right, and I know that Barnes just get the overhand right. And I'm like, the hardest part about this fight is the distance. Use that front kick. Don't use it too early. Keep your guard up. Wait till he gasses himself or overextends himself. Go with the grappling game, even though it's not your favorite thing. You'll be able to hold position, right? I'm literally having a gameplay conversation with probably one of the best MMA fighters in the world. Like, this is awesome. Somebody goes, it might have been me, it might have been Randy. You smell dog shit? Like, I don't know. I think I do. Everybody looks, and Dale's like, did you just drag dog shit into Randy Couture's house? And I was like, yes. Took my shoes up, walked into his kitchen. Dale starts helping him out with the game, and I'm like, cleaning. I get out of my Doc Martens in Beverly Hills in Randy Couture's kitchen.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, this is the best day ever. So what makes this a little bit more funny to me is that my wife meets Randy Couture at an event in Las Vegas and says, hey, my husband and you know each other from a game you worked on in MMA. Now, I don't know if she volunteered the dog shit information before or after, but he's like, oh, yeah, I definitely remember.
Yeah. Oh, dog shit, Nick.
Yeah, oh, that guy. Tell him to stay away from my house.
Oh, Jesus. That's that had to be mortifying in the situation.
It was weird. It was pretty weird. Another thing that makes it even more funny is that Randy and I have a connection where my roommate in college was Frank Trigg, and Frank Trigg wrestled at Oklahoma State with Randy, and then went on to be in the UFC and is now in the Hall of Fame. So we had another connection, and now, when I talked to Frank later, he's like, that's going to be the first thing I hear about the next time I see Randy.
The dog shit.
So here we are, like 15 years later. I think it should be past now. Everything should be over.
And it shows that even 15 years later, it all comes back to dog shit. You bring up Randy there, and that I actually have some questions about that, because there was the whole Dana White's war on EA sort of thing, and no UFC fighter can lend their likeness to the EA game. And here's Randy Couture on the cover of the game, and it's Fedor and Randy, which is the fight that Dana wasn't able to put together. So I want to ask, like, was that an issue at all as far as like likeness goes? Because not only was it Randy Couture, but then you could put him in the Strikeforce cage. And that to me just seems like a nightmare for you guys.
Okay, we couldn't. So yes, he was in a strike. He could be in a Strikeforce cage in the game. This is like deep legal stuff, riveting for your viewers and listeners.
I think it's interesting.
we couldn't do it in any marketing publication. Did it ever happen in marketing publications or marketing content? I believe the answer is yes, and it's right behind Jason Barnes.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean,
so we got a talking to for that thing.
Yeah.
Wait, what are you talking about exactly?
Well, it's the cover.
Yeah.
No, the Slurpee cup.
I don't know if you say, and it's my Slurpee cup.
Oh shit! The Strikeforce, the corner padded.
That's
with the
the
logo.
first time anybody saw that, and
That's
it
the
was
first time
not
I've seen that
supposed
cup.
to be released.
Oh no!
Yeah, there was some drama. There was some licensing drama, and we were deep in it. And what's interesting is it's not owned by a player association, so each individual fighter is handled one-on-one. So Jeff Morrison showed up to sign his contract. Bob Sapp signed his contract when we sent it to him to show him what a contract looks like. He sent it back from Japan with a ballpoint pen right there. The Diaz brothers and their mom, there was we had to go through this. Actually, my favorite is Ken Shamrock, who is a gem of a man, and I will always talk about how great he was. And that night was one of the best.
Well, Frank's great too, but Ken was amazing.
So Ken was amazing. Frank showed up. Wait, I'm sorry. Frank is amazing.
Frank,
Ken showed up and said, "Hey, one of the reasons why MMA exists is me." so I should be on the cover. And he hardballed EA to the point where did you and I come back from lunch and we saw Dale up on the balcony and he was just like sitting there like gritting his teeth and like sparks were coming out?
Yes.
So like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, go in there and handle it. And we went in there and he had a couple of things to say. We ended up having dinner with him. It all got smoothed over.
Yeah. So
he was the nicest guy in the world. Remember that guy recognized him?
It was actually a homeless guy recognized him. Ken came over. I think he gave him some cash, gave him a hug, talked to him for a while, said, "Hey, you're going to turn it around. You know, I believe in you." Ken told the most amazing original UFC, some of the early UFC fights, because he had already fought in Japan, and just the stories he told. But I think that was the thing, is that, you know, we had all these fighters come in to get their face scanned and do that. And kind of what we did was, you know, part of this, again, with the team is, it wasn't everybody, like, it wasn't just marketing and the executive producer got to go hang out with the fighters. We actually distributed who had lunch with fighters among the team, who went to dinner and did those things, so that everybody, you know, because someone might come in and this might be their favorite. So they get to go to lunch with him and go hang out with them. And that was part of the thing we did. I mean, honestly, the fighters are awesome, all of them. And the one thing that I always remember, too, is we'd always ask every fighter, what do you want to see in the game? And every fighter that was from Brazil, they all said the same thing. I want to be able to show respect for my opponent and for the fight game itself. And we didn't actually have touch gloves in initially, but we heard so much people saying we need to touch gloves that we built touch gloves in for that reason alone. And, you know, it's part of fighting, but every fighter from Brazil it was about respect. And that was awesome. And then Jacare also, awesome. You know, sometimes the guys would put us in holds to show us something, and Jacare's wrists were like the size of like someone's thigh. His wrists were just beyond massive. Jeff Munson. Yeah. Like, I asked him about, you know, he would love to fight off his back, and I asked him about a takedown move. Yeah. And he literally grabbed me by the crotch in the elevator. Do you remember that, Nick? Grabbed me by the crotch and was like, this is the move I do. I'm like, oh my God. What do I do? Munson's pulling me down. I'm riding with it because I don't know what to do. So it was, again, like Preston's talked about, with like, it was a lot of work. There was a lot of love, a lot of great energy all over the place. And the fighters brought it too. Yeah.
It's an interesting kinetic group to work with. Big John, while we were doing the office referee, and I was arguing with somebody over a leg lock, and John's like, no, come here. And he's got his blue jeans on, but flip-flops, he kicks his flip-flops off, he's like, lay down. I'm like, okay. Like, in the middle of us filming him, like, in between sets.
I know one of my favorite fighter stories. I got to meet a lot of them, but a lot of times I was just, you know, hey, a big fan, autograph, whatever. But I'll never forget the story when Kung Lee came in, and I think it was an impromptu thing where, you know, I think Simon was like a big Kung Lee fan, and was like, dude, we've got Kung Lee in the studio. We better go get the mocap suit and capture that spinning kick of his. You know, so I do believe that is the spinning kick animation of the game, is Kung Lee's. But it was such an impromptu thing that they did it downstairs, like in the conference room. So it wasn't like in the mocap studio. We weren't prepared to do a shoot that day. And poor Rocky, our audio designer, good friend of ours, had the unfortunate luck of drawing the cards and having to hold a pad for Kung Lee's kicks. And this wasn't like an MMA fighting pad. It was like a gymnastics pad. And not like any gymnastics pad, but like a super worn gymnastics pad that was flimsy. And I'll still never forget to this day Rocky's eyes as the kick was coming. It's just like, I mean, just as that kick was coming in. And even Kung was laughing about it. I know that was one of my favorite moments, you know, meet fighters.
That was a good one. He did scissors takedown on somebody, too. I don't think it was Rocky, which is a pretty scary thing to be part of.
Probably so like that's the other thing. We threw, you know, Victor with a purple belt. We threw Victor in the suit. We ran over to the local mocap and threw Victor in the suit to do some finishing moves.
So whenever somebody does the Bob Sapp like I'm in full guard, I pick you up and slam you down. That's me picking up Victor and then holding him up in the air and then slamming him down. And when we talked about it, we were like, is this okay? I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can pick him up. I'm not that much bigger than him, but I think I could probably do that. I don't know how many times he's good. He goes, twice. I can do it twice. And I wrecked him twice. I was like,
This guy look good.
Or what about one of my favorites that shows up every once in a while on Facebook is talking about turtle defense with Boss and he crucifix and neck cranks me, and he's like, then you just grab your leg and you squeeze, and I'm like, wow, just like that. He makes noises. Yeah.
Bob was a trip, man. If we could get the audio from the outtakes of Boz, man, we probably have some stuff to ruin him a little bit. He said some pretty outlandish stuff. But.
He was really good.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, so, one of the things I'm also most proud of is I loved our commentary. Cause
oh, yeah.
So the philosophy is customized versus personalized. And from a design standpoint, customized means I can pick the color of my hair and, my eyes and my shorts or whatever it is. But personalized is when you recognize it, which is why when you learn like a diving punch from Militic, Moro called that out, but he didn't repeat it. And then we had a whole system about, in your career, recognizing who you're fighting and was this a rematch and all these things. And we were down to the last out, like you got to be in by like 6 a.m. And Rocky just owning the audio. Maybe not my best managerial move ever, but I walked over and I handed him 3 Monster energy drinks and said, I don't care what it takes. Get the personal commentary in. He worked all night, and I'm so proud of the commentary in the game because I feel like it was one of the first games that really understood recognizing what you're doing as a gamer throughout your career.
That tool, I think, that was the first year that the context tool was used. We had a good commentary system at EA Sports before, but that was the first version of the new tool. And so Rocky was actually a tip of the spear for that. I still think it holds up really, really well. That's a strong commentary tool.
I can tell you for a fact it holds up because when I was playing the game and I captured all the footage for my video, and like that's why I spent so much time on the commentary and just like I sat out and I just played Morrow and Frank like going back and forth. I think to this day it's the best commentary that's been in an MMA game because it is so like context specific. Like specific, especially playing through career mode, you learn a move and then they'll tell you exactly where it came from. And the thing that stood out to me was the rematch thing. About they would talk about they fought before and all this, and even now I don't hear that in other games. So those 3 Monster energies
the only
were
one
worth
that's
it.
done it, and as these guys will know, I'm actually known as the patient gamer because I don't buy games. I'm a PC gamer, and I get it on Steam during the summer sale when they're 6 years old. I get them for $10, and I've got a sickness, as Vic would tell you. I got a sickness, I tell you. I got to have it. It's on sale. But so I'm just now going through Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think of Rocky all the time when I play that game because of the recognition of an event that has happened, or you're at the next day at the camp and there's a new story that you haven't heard yet. And they recognize, that's a nice haircut, Arthur. Like, I did get my haircut. That's right. But every time I think of Rocky, because I think I don't know if we get enough credit for that because I think it was kind of groundbreaking at the time. It wasn't crazy deep like Red Dead. I mean, Red Dead's at levels that are just ungodly. But
they got 5,000 people working on that game for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole different deal.
70 people, 2 years. We did a good job.
Big shout out to Rocky because that was awesome. I loved it, and it just had immersion. It helped you kind of stay into the game. And
I wish Rocky was here for this because I'm not going to do it justice. But Rocky, we I promoted him over to design. Met him. He was a producer on a game show, and I was like, "You got design chops. You got to come over." Just promoting Preston up. But so early on, we had design principles, and we worked off design principles. I got the nickname, I think, the B-52 Bomber because I would write the design principles, and then I'd leave the team who was working on it in a brainstorm and come in. And they're off in the weeds in career mode, that the Yakuza's involved in the mob. And I came in, I erased everything, and I was like, here is the design principles. Here they are. stick within this lane, and then I slam the door and leave, right? So I sound like a horrible person, but with our initial, onboarding and all these other things, Rocky's disagreeing with me, and he's getting all worked up. And I guess he tells the story much better, but I walked him through, like, almost like too childlike. Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is a good idea? Why would I do this? And kind of, so he tells the story, he walks out of the room, and, he's shows no emotion during it, but he's like, this fucking asshole, what does he think he is? This motherfucker just pissed off at me, stomps off, and then, like, I don't know, that night, I called him at, like, 9 p.m., because I knew I pissed him off, at least. I was like, how you doing? Just make sure he's all right. He's like, thought about it, and you were right. Like, that's where he's like, I worked through it, and it was just so funny because, that was part of our feedback, is just that brutal honesty with each other and criticizing. And nobody took it better than Rocky, I will say that.
It was radical candor, but also with context, which is, it takes work to go through. It's not like a snappy bumper sticker, everything is fine. You have to, like, walk through it, and then you have to digest it yourself. Yeah.
So the other one is, so at EA, we had conference rooms. And each floor had, for reasons I can't explain, common names. Like, a floor had a theme. And we were on the floor that had Stunned Silence. It was like States of Mind. What was the other one? Stunned
Giddy
Silence.
Anticipation. Stunned Silence.
And one other one. And Rocky worked those into the commentary. You'll hear Morrow go, the crowd is stunned silent. And that was like a little inside joke that we did because of that. And the other one is Morrow. Morrow is absolutely amazing. I don't know if you watched his documentary.
Bipolar Rock and Roller.
Yeah, it's so good.
He was so cool and humble, and I remember asking for his autograph. He's like, "You want my autograph?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. Like, you're a rock star commentator," and like he just was like blown away. He's like I should be asking you for your autograph, Preston. I'm like, dude, I'm just Tester Joe over here, man. Like,
he was the best. We were flying out to a Strike Force fight. It was in St. Louis. He was flying down from Canada. I was flying up from Orlando. Huge storms hit the Midwest, so somehow we both got diverted to Dulles, Washington, which makes no sense, I know, from going to Orlando. You're trying to go to St. Louis. And didn't know it. I was sitting there, and he came walking up and tapped me on the back of my shoulder. Didn't know knew who I was before, but was asking the stranger how long the delay was, and realized who I was. And we sat there for 6 hours while the flight was delayed and just talked MMA the entire time. Morrow, cannot say enough good things about him. His energy, love that guy. Just absolutely amazing.
A true love and passion. Stephen Quadros.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I took him out to dinner. We went back to the one hotel in downtown Orlando, and he sat there until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like talking about how like the mixed martial arts. Basically, he's the one that credited with giving that or creating that term, but also just like the world and how it sort of evolved. Nobody knows as much. Very few people know as much as we did. It was good. Being able to connect with those people and bring some of that stuff back to the game was awesome. Middle Easy was an awesome partner too.
Oh yeah, man. Jason Noir, those guys, man.
Jason Noir, still friends with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Barnes competing with Zeus at the launch party. Zeus is like, no, I've been playing this game for weeks. I can take you. He's like, okay, what are we? And it's so Barnes, right? Well, what are we fighting for? Push-ups, 10 push-ups, win right here.
In the middle of the party.
In the middle of a party on the club floor. Yeah, but he was like so convinced he was gonna win. Hey, the dude paid though. He did. He had like a trench coat on and he did 10 push-ups right in the middle of it.
He totally paid.
How did you beat him?
Oh, I toyed with him. That was the best part. I got cocky, toyed with him like a cat and a mouse. And then I think I just knocked him out. But I mean, he was shocked. He did his 10 push-ups. It was awesome. For me, it's creative bets, right? So I've had a mohawk. I've had pink hair. I've worn a Tampa Bay Buccaneers helmet, the old orange and white, to a food court mall because I lost a bet. Oh my God, Kevin Bailey had me bet. We had this giant Scooby-Doo stuffed animal, like full size. and we had been talking. He's a Packers fan. I was a Steelers fan. The fan of the Packers beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl. He cut out all of the stuffing, and I wore basically a Scooby-Doo stuffed animal suit out. I had to wear it all day at work, and I wear it out to a restaurant for lunch. So, part of that is you gotta have creativity, you gotta have some fun with what we were doing, and that was a big part of our team.
Yeah, I figure I have some, I guess, basic questions for you guys that maybe you've taken before, maybe you haven't, but I keep looking at the EA MMA logos on the hat and on the shirts, and I wanted to ask, was there ever a different title considered for the game? Like, did anybody throw out, like, that might sound a little generic, what if we called this, like, Strike Force's video game, or what went into that?
Well, I mean, the truth is, the initial pitch to our marketing team was explaining what MMA was. And is this a common term? And we didn't feel, I think ultimately we talked about cage fighting, we talked about a bunch of different things, but we didn't feel like the Strike Force license was enough, like, to put it up against UFC. So I think that's why we ended up with EA Sports MMA, because we were covering so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
We had an uphill battle for a long time with, like, people don't say they play NFL. Like, they understand they play football, but for some reason back then in the mixed martial arts world, it's like, oh, you do UFC. Well, no, it's mixed martial arts. Well, what does that mean? The two weren't synonymous at the time. People were like, well, all I know is I like UFC. I like UFC. They didn't really know that as mixed martial arts. So,
but in hindsight, we would have loved to have had a more powerful, connected name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you bring up the, like, is MMA, you had to explain what MMA was, and people just call it UFC no matter what they're watching, even still to this day sometimes. To that point, I remember when I was in high school, it had to be 2006, 2007. I remember one of the kids in my gym class asked the coach, I overheard them talking about, like, he asked the coach, what would you rather watch, coach, UFC or MMA? And the coach hadn't answered, and I went, that's like asking what would you rather watch, baseball or MLB? Like,
right.
MLB is like an organization, baseball is the sport. Like, and I was explaining this to both of them. They had no idea what I was talking about. So
yeah.
I totally, like, dive bombed their conversation, but I walked away from that going, like, I'm the only one who knows shit around here. On the topic of, like, Strike Force and titles and whatnot, the alternate, like, A-level promotion in the game is Mystic, and that's, like, the Japanese promotion with the white ring and, like, the long ramp and the pyro, kind of.
And you can kick someone, soccer kick them on the
soccer
ground.
Kicking and stomping, yeah, but no elbows in those rules.
No, of course not.
I was gonna ask, like, was there ever a conversation to try and get the Dream license in place of the generic Mystic?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's where it all started, right? Pride, Dream,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. He's wearing his EA Sports Japanese version, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Japanese version.
Which has a different title, right? It doesn't translate to mixed martial arts, because I think that was a trademarked.
Yeah, I think it translates into, it's not no holds barred. It's like a Valley Tudo kind of free fighting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at that time, Dream was in financial trouble. So it did not make sense for us to actually license with them. We had that conversation. I'm drawing a blank on, part of that was getting the announcer from Dream. The woman, I cannot remember her name right now.
Pride Lady.
Money Hart.
MMA knows her as Pride Lady.
Money Hart.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, thank you, Preston.
But that was our, obviously, look, we would have liked to have had it. That would have been great. But that's why we came up with our own Mystic, and basically, read between the lines. It had everything that Dream had and Pride had, right? And that was the idea behind it.
It was perfect, too, because, like, it wasn't a stretch. It lined up so well, but also, even in, like, the intro video where it goes down the roster, it's like you got the classics like Boss and Randy, who was still fighting at the time, but then, like, Dream isn't there, but, like, Shinya Aoki is there. Jacare was there, who was like just about to jump over to Strikeforce, I believe. Joachim Hansen was there. I was like, these are all the dream heavy hitters. The only thing missing, Bob Sapp.
Yep.
The only thing missing is the logo. So I figured there had to be some sort of conversation. So that makes sense as to it was a financial thing. And interesting world to be in without like an MLB or NFL license. Now it's not like that anymore. It's basically UFC and FC1. Like what's like you're pretty reduced at this point. It was fun. It was a little bit like the Wild West. With a financial thing kind of being the reason the dream deal didn't come together, I guess one of the like bad parts about EA Sports MMA is that it was not a blockbuster success as far as sales went. But like we talked about you guys mentioned the review scores and Metacritic and everything. That was all great, but the sales weren't. And how does that feel when you guys broke your backs on this game and it's, in my opinion, still holds up? And you guys had to be expecting this to be a launching pad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I have never agreed 100% with review scores. There's always a slight difference where they're coming at it from a perspective that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that really, really bothered me, and I want Barnes to just go off on this one, is great game. Too bad it doesn't have the UFC license.
Yeah.
Like, why does that impact the score of the enjoyment of the game? How many points can that really take off? And to Barnes' point earlier, even with the UFC license, it's not a sure thing, right? You don't get an A+ just because you've got the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm reading basically that was the first sentence or second sentence of every review. But putting the heart and soul into it, putting everything into it, and not having sales. Ultimately, EA got the UFC license, which I think was our long-term goal. Yeah, I mean, it hurts that it didn't sell well, but we're proud of it. There's such a strong community that we've talked about. The people that did play it loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love, is the passion that was there from the actual fans. And, it's unfortunate we didn't have the UFC license, but I still talk about this game, like I said, every time I can, about the pride I have it, the amount of things I learned from it, the friendships. The sales would have been great, but that doesn't make or break it for me.
Preston, you spent a lot of time on the forums with these fans. And
I was one of them.
I was there for the long haul, and that was to reveal the curtain a little bit, that was a labor of love. Like, that wasn't an official title of mine. I was never promoted to community manager. That was just, I didn't even know the forums existed until, honestly, Jeff Ecker, bring it back up, we had the conversations about getting music into the game. And I was like the resident heavy metal, death metal guy. They're like, well, Preston, do you have some recommendations of like heavy walkout music? And I gave a couple recommendations. One of them being my favorite band, Malevolent Creation from Florida. I mean, just a down and out death metal band who I knew we could get in the game for probably nothing. Like, hey, Josh Barnett, huge death metal guy. So we can't license Bolt Thrower because it's a European band and it would cost, a lot more money. Malevolent Creation is a good second pick. But anyways, Jeff let me know, like, hey, someone on the forums was talking about how they love Malevolent Creation being the band. I was like, oh, no way. Like, can you get me an account? Can I go respond? And from there, once I found out about it, I was like, oh, man, there's actually all these cool people. Some may remember, you may remember, Ian, there was some dude who spammed pictures of poop. I mean, constantly. It was like...
That's right.
12 hours a day, this dude had a bot or something. And I took it as a personal mission to win. So as he posted them, I was hiding them. And I'm telling you, I checked into that forum.
Those Randy Couture getting back at Nick.
Yeah.
It all comes back to dog shit.
Hey, Ian, let's just wrap it up right there. I'm not going to be able to beat that. But no, I was night and day. I made it a mission to beat that guy and hide those posts, as many as he could put out. Now, I couldn't get to him right away because I was working, but I was checking the forums. I mean, as often as I could without getting in trouble for a job I wasn't supposed to be doing anyways, hiding those posts. And I tell you, one of my proudest community moments was that guy finally reaching out to me and going, hey, man, can we talk? I said, yeah, what's up? And it turned out he was an EA Sports fan who had his account banned and he couldn't play anymore. And all it took was simply going, hey, man, I'll reach out and get your account unblocked. And the poop went away, and he was a cool guy ever since. But it took about 9 months of hiding poop photos to...
You didn't tell me this. I would never have let you unban him. I would have double banned him.
I would too, but that was the thing. Let's turn him around. What? Eventually.
The second chance.
Won him over a kindness eventually.
Yeah, man. That's amazing. That's awesome.
To answer the initial question, you know, when that game dropped and it wasn't doing well, obviously crushed because for me, again, going to my story, you know, I was literally a high school dropout, got my good enough diploma, somehow stumbled into this job that I was only supposed to work for 3 months. And here I was in the good graces of guys like Nick and Barnes who are now giving me opportunity to not just be a tester, but to actually influence the design. And that's something I had joked around about as a kid, going like, man, one day wouldn't that be cool to be sitting around the table talking about video games? And like all of a sudden it's like I've found myself doing that somehow. So more inside the curtain of kind of the way a lot of these studios work is like if you're on Madden, you know, if you're a tester on Madden, you wait your 8 years and your Madden team, you'll get promoted if you stick around long enough. One of my, I won't say faults, but one of my strengths and my faults is a lot of times I ended up on the new game teams because I was able to hit the ground fast. I was able to build QA teams fast, build relationships fast. I never got to be in with a team for the 8 years to wait my turn. So when I got my turn to be promoted up, it's like, hey, I've put my time in. I'm on a time that recognizes it. And when it's like, oh, by the way, this isn't doing so well, we're probably not going to make this again, and you're probably going to have to go back to QA. And that was the hardest part, was like, oh, that dream is now over, in a sense. I'm back to the trenches. And not that I dislike QA. I made a lot of great friends there. There was definitely some good times. I mean, it was like a locker room. You're in there with the boys. You're getting down and dirty for 12 hours at a time, and you're on that Red Bull buzz together, you know. But that was the hardest part for me, was going, the opportunity is gone, you know. Yeah. So, but then opportunistically, I jumped in when Nick was like, hey, you need help with live production. I'm your guy. Let me in. Let me do that. So, you know, we did extend the life a little bit. I did get to do more outside of QA to help, again, improve the skill set. And ultimately, those things have led to other things outside of EA, which has enriched my life in many different ways. But that was the hardest part of the time. I was like, oh, God, there goes the shot.
I'm gonna put you over extra. The poop guy posting all the poop. You did such a good job hiding those. I don't remember that. I have no memories of a poop guy. So yeah. You were obviously damn good at it.
I need to put that on a resume.
Destroyer of poop pictures. Yeah, he would have pictures of like a PlayStation with custom messages like, I will not play this game, it's shit. Like, just like, I mean, literal pictures of poop in a toilet, just like. And 200 of them would show up somehow, just like within milliseconds. So some sort of bot. So again, man. I took that as a personal mission, and I won. I won over time. But
the other thing I want to put you over for is I mentioned in my video that my friend and I, who's his name is Tim, and his PlayStation ID was like Nightmare217. So we were, if you guys ever looked at like who was playing on PS3, we were both there constantly, and we were on the message board. And I told the story about how we would get on the message board and be like, it is taking so long to level up and get all the belts through the multiplayer. And we would complain, and then it was you who would be like, okay, we'll do double XP this weekend. And to us, that blew us away. Like, we had never heard of having access to the people who were involved with the game, let alone they would listen and, like, react to us bitching about things. Like,
yeah, and those were tough sells for whatever reason. And Nick could talk to this. I know John White, the online designer. There was a philosophy back then of like keeping the disc in the tray for whatever reason. Was Nick? I'll let you speak to that. But those were hard sells of like, hey, can I get some more XP? It's like, I don't know, man. We've had this plan and how long it's supposed to take people. And if we give them double XP, these people who are here aren't going to be here. Like, there's a whole process to it.
Yeah. I would say I probably hadn't heard anything like, let's do a double XP weekend. Like, maybe Call of Duty had been doing it before, but John White came to me and he was like, we should do a double XP weekend. And I thought, tell me why. He said, well, because, and he was the designer of that original ladder. So he's like, because we made it too hard. Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Sure. Here's what was mostly, I mean, John worked for Barnes for a real long time, so he knew where he was headed and he knew what he was working with, and that concept came up, and then he worked with Preston on it, and to work with the team. Here's what was most interesting about that to me. EA had a locked-out policy for employees to be on the forum. I don't recall any game team before us having developers on the forums. And in fact, I had to write like a mini job description and basically an agreement on my behalf that people like Preston or John wouldn't do something bad on the forum.
Yeah. There's clearly an incident somewhere at EA.
Yeah.
Earlier. Don't know who, don't know what they said.
It's the poop guy.
That got us all banned. So.
Wow. That's
so
interesting.
being able to put more of us in the forums, that's another area where now it's almost like, I mean, I deal a lot in like venture capital and startup games and stuff like that, and they're always like community first and developed by the community, and we're going to listen to our fans. And the truth is that that's really valuable, but you need to be careful because it's almost like asking a little kid, what do you want to have for dinner? They say marshmallows. And you're like, well, you can't have marshmallows until we do all this other stuff. And then they get mad at you for not getting marshmallows. But you're playing with fire. But if you build out like a system, like the policy of how EA employees are supposed to, were supposed to engage with fans on the website, I wrote that up and I had to send that out. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. I was never worried that somebody like Preston was going to all of a sudden become like a troll. I was actually more excited to see what happens. And people like Rocky and John, like, they made more interesting things come out of that. And again, that's community that I can even recall, like the most positive and building community. And so I think it ultimately worked out really well. We'll see.
It was a tougher sales later on when it was like, hey, can we do 10x? Can we do 20x? And they're like, you're out of your mind, Preston. No way. But then eventually, towards the end, to your point, it's like, hey, we know we're sunsetting this feature at a certain time. Again, we talked about it earlier. The cost of the servers were expensive, and I think Nick broke the dollars down to me because I was upset. I said, look, I go online to play with these guys every night. Like, I don't want this to go away. Mm-hmm. And the way Nick broke it down, it's like I can't give the exact dollars and cents, but with the number of concurrent players we had on, it was costing us like $50 a person on a game we were selling for $8 in the bargain bin. So like financially, I can understand why a company like EA would not be paying $50 a month for those people to play on a game that didn't even sell for $50 when it came out. So I certainly understood it. So it's like, hey, we've got to let these people get these trophies. So I know people like KS, Kyle Stevens, Paul Lucier. I mean, these guys were trophy hunters. I knew them who were testers, who were trophy hunters, and it's like those guys would be upset if they didn't have a chance to get this. So let's do what we can. The biggest fear is like with 10x XP, what happens for the guys who are like at level 1 and all of a sudden we're bumping them up to level 4? Like we hadn't tested those things because there was never the concept of like a test case of, well, what happens if we bump it up to 300 XP and we bump them up to our red belt? And, that was just a ridiculous concept. So those were the obvious nervousness of like executing something like that. But again, it was like, dude, there's a month to go or whatever. So let's rip the Band-Aid, let's let these people get it. And I was happy to kind of be as Barnes always said, I was the voice of the community. I always brought the feedback from the forums back. Hey, this is what I've been hearing. People saying this is overpowered. This isn't working right. There's a bug going on with this. Like, how can we fix this? And kind of going back and forth. So I prided myself on that, just being a voice of the people and giving somebody the opportunity to have their voice be heard. Now, I mean, it's common. You said there's Twitter, there's Reddit, there's Discord. I mean, there's so many avenues that you can reach out to developers and talk with them. But back then, it wasn't the norm.
Yeah, it was. You definitely stood out in that whole situation because I remember those stories. My buddy remembers those stories. I scoured the internet trying to find the message boards, even like on the Wayback Machine, so I could screenshot it just to show in my video, and I can't find them. A lot of the EA Sports MMA stuff was forwarding to like the EA UFC games, and I was like, "That's not what I want. You know what I want." But yeah, it made an impact on us, and we remember that because that was like the coolest thing to us. That
I knew I had made it when I got my first hater video. Like somebody made a video talking about me, about the way I was running the chat in the game. I was like, that's it. I know I've made it. Like I've got a hater video against me. I know I'm doing something right because if you didn't care, you wouldn't have sent the hate video out. So I got you.
Was that you, Preston, that did go get them platinums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember is like, it had to be right around the time that I saw on IGN, like EA shutting down a number of servers, and I like had a bad feeling that EA MMA was going to be on there. And I'm looking at the list, and it was like Mafia 2 or whatever, and then I see EA MMA, and I was like, dude, we don't have time. Like, for as long as we had played that game, and we would spend weekends, we would call it marathoning, just playing fights over and over all night. It's like, we don't have time. And then I remember going to the message board and seeing that, like, we're going to do 10 times XP from now until the last day. Like, go get those platinums. And we were like, oh, shit. And I did it immediately. Like, I was 24/7, and I noticed my buddy wasn't playing, and I was like, he gave it to us. You got to do it. And he's like, I will. And then I was worried he wasn't going to. And then, like, the day they shut down, I texted him, and he was like, yeah, I finished it last week. And then I checked his profile to make sure he wasn't full of shit, and he had done it. I don't know why we didn't do it together, but he did it, like, in his downtime, I guess. But, yeah, we both did it, so that was huge to us.
I still have a very vivid memory of being and fighting that last night and just waiting for the server to shut down. Like, just like, is it going to be this fight? Is it going to be this fight? And it was like, I don't know, 2:15 or 2:20 in the morning or something like that. It went down. I was there. I mean, I saw it to the absolute light shut off.
Down with the shit.
That's amazing. I know I fought that day too. I don't quite remember seeing the end of the server though. But I fought that day too. Yeah, man. It was. I mean, I don't know. I would not be surprised. I would be saddened, but I would not be surprised if something like that never happens again in my game career. You know, it's just. The world's different now. The games are different now. I think that there's place for games like what we used to make, but I don't see them being made right now.
That's powerful input right there.
Yeah. So if you haven't done so, Nick's got a bunch of talks out on the web. Nick's one of my favorite speakers. I mean, he's wise in many ways in the way of game development, design, production. So if you haven't, go treat yourself. He's got some good GDC talks on, designers.
All like good stuff from Preston and Barnes.
But before I post this, I'm gonna bug you guys for like links to go to all of your stuff that you're doing now and other things that you've been proud of, so I can include them in the description. But I don't know how much time you guys have. We've been going for like 2 hours, so if we want to start to wrap, that's okay with me.
What was the response to your letter that was not people from the development team? Like, what did you get a sense from? I mean, I read it when it was hot off the presses and I had made my post. But what did you see as the input or the reflection?
Is for my video?
Yeah.
You know what? It's kind of weird. For the longest time, my retrospectives, I would do like these history ofs. So across like a span of 6 months, I would put out 5 parts of all covering the same thing. So like WWE SmackDown or Halloween. But with the EA Sports MMA video, that was the first one where I was like, I just want to do one-offs. So I want to do this game and then this game. I don't want to tie myself to one thing. So I knew that doing it as a one-off and that this game didn't set the world on fire with sales, I was like, I'm taking a chance. Maybe like 5,000 people are going to watch this. And now that I've done 5 of those life and deaths, this one is the biggest by far. So you guys keep talking about like the community that supported this game, and it's like a super tight community. I feel like every member of that community has been in the comments going like, oh shit, like I remember this, I remember that, I know who you're talking about here, I was there for that. So it was a super positive response, and like for me it was a huge hit. Like I did a video on Dead Island, another game I love, didn't get watched a lot. I did one on the MotorStorm series, didn't get watched a lot, but this EA Sports MMA video, everyone who ever touched this game I feel like has come to the video and they remember it and it made an impact. So
it's awesome that you had Jeff Becker reply. I mean, I saw Volga kind of talked about it because he did the cloth physics. Cloth physics with blood transfer.
Blood transfer was huge.
Blood transfer was unachievable when we started.
Yes.
Where you would rub up against somebody that had blood, and the blood would end up on the other fighter, which is
unheard of.
It makes me again. It fills me with pride. I'm sure it fills everybody else with pride to hear that the community was really strong. The game team was really strong. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Barnes and I worked together at EA. We worked together at EA for a while, but then when he went off to Microsoft, he's like, hey, I just got a job at Forza, and they've got an opening, and I think it's for you. And I'm like, I don't know, EA's pretty good. Why would I leave? And then it would not be an exaggeration to say that the lightning in the jar that we had during MMA is one of the reasons why I went off to go work with Barnes at Microsoft as well. It's a source of gravity, a source of pride. I don't know. We do this to entertain people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. And this is one of those times when we know. So I cherish even this conversation.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
This is awesome. It's so good to hear that people, whether it was a smaller group than we want or not, had the passion and played it with the passion that we put into it. And like Nick said, video games have changed. A lot of things have changed. But to me, I'm still, like this old school user first. It's all about the gamer. That is the argument. I made it, while making it even, and the game, what I work on today is, and Nick and Preston can vouch for this. Whenever someone says, well, Barnes wants this, I go, no. I don't want anything. I'm a lucky paid representative to make a video game for somebody else. I say the gamer, the person that we're making for it wants this. I'm just here to argue for them because they're not here. And that was a lot of, times in MMA where I'm arguing for something because I felt like the gamer out there is going to want this. And it's not for me ever. It's for the people playing the game. And that's what drives me. I just want to make games that people love more than anything and are entertained by.
It helps that Barnes likes to argue.
Well, we used to call him he was the angry creative director for a while when we used to do a podcast, design forum podcast internally. Yes. We would get one of the angry creative director. He'd come in and testify at Rage Against the Machine.
That's right. You had entrance music, Rage Against internal podcast about game design and game production, and we'd bring him in. And I tell you, we skirted with
when we wanted a spicy take, we brought Barnes in. When we wanted because Vic wasn't going to talk trash. Jorge really was going to talk a little bit of trash.
I didn't hold back.
We wanted somebody to get spicy. Call Barnes.
I'd come in like Mike Tyson, throw my punches, and get out. All right, so that reminds me of one other story. So, with the angry creative director, we've been working on something. Here's the bad part. I don't even remember. Hot light flashes. We've been working on something, and it just had not come together yet. And I'd had enough people in my ear coming by the cube. Hey, have you done this? It's like, it's coming in. And Peyton, our art director, sits down next to me, and we're doing something. And he says something about the game, and I lose it, and I just flip the chair. Like, I just stand up and literally flip a chair and walk off. And but that was part of it. That was okay. Because he was passionate in arguing, I was passionate in arguing, come back, hug, laugh about it, flip the chair. It happens. The other one you made me think of is, so we used to play basketball.
Talking like that only happened once. I remember.
You throw one shoe.
We were leaving a room. Everybody's heated. Nobody's mad at another human, just kind of mad at the system and the world and the situation and the clock. And I'm behind Barnes by about maybe 8 feet. So I'm just staring at him, and nobody's talking. He's just walking this way. And spin kick. Ow! Hit the chair. The mood for him, clear, evident. The mood for me, I didn't stop and pick up the damn chair either.
Yeah, some passion on the team. It made me think also, so like I said, we played basketball 2 or 3 times a week. We ran our own leagues and things like that. Even but our head of HR, Jose, bust me with an elbow. I
play basketball. That shit'll kill you. I've been wrestling for years. I've got very few injuries.
He busted me open and I'm bleeding, but I had a meeting that I had to get to. That I went to the meeting and I'm literally just bleeding out. I went and got it stitched up after the meeting because we had a very crucial meeting.
We took pictures of it.
Yes.
The art director was like, "Oh, can we take pictures of blood on your face for reference?"
For reference.
We did it on your arm too.
Yeah, I was a little bit bloody everywhere. So, but that was, I could deal with stitching up my face later. Yeah. So my point being is there was a lot of passion put into this game.
That's amazing.
Good.
We've gone for almost 2.5 hours now, and we could keep going or we could do this another time. But if we want to wrap for now, I'd love to hear some parting thoughts from you guys about EA Sports MMA and just the landscape, looking back on it, your experiences, kind of closing the same way we opened in a way, without going it all comes back to dog shit.
All right, so again, loved your video. Almost forgot how many things we put into it. I'm so proud of EA Sports MMA. I'm proud of the team, the friendships. We've talked about it with lightning in the bottle, and that special chemistry, that healthy debate. Knowing that there was just so much passion put into it. It was a passion project for us. I love hearing how passionate the fans were, the community was about it. I talk highly of it still today and will always, the lessons learned, everything that came from it. Like I said, I'm competitive. I would love to go back and do it again. If you said right now, let's get the band back together and we can go have one more shot at it, I'm coming hard at it. I got a million more ideas how to make it better. I'm in. So yeah, one of my favorite things I've ever done in life is be part of EA Sports MMA.
That's probably like the best way to put it. One of the favorite things I've been part of was EA Sports MMA. Lightning in a bottle. I remember a manager of a studio that I worked for after EA said that teams make games and culture makes teams. And we probably didn't know it at the time, but we had all the right ingredients, all the right temperature, and all the right time to have that thing work out. You can try and make it, and sometimes you're lucky, but this time we did it, and it's something that I can reference and think about, and would be glad to go to bat with anybody that worked on that game again. Really, really happy. Having a chance to talk about it like this reminds me of why game development and sort of the slow motion entertainment of game development means so much to people like us. I'm working on something that people won't get a chance to enjoy for 18 months. In the best case, games are popular for a year. And in our case, we came out into a really rough market, right? 2008 crash. I was the one going to these publishing meetings, and I kept saying, stop projecting so low because you're killing our ability to market it. And if we can't market it, we can't sell it because nobody will know it's there. And they would come back and they said, all of our projections and all of our economic foresight, we can't see the bottom. So the market was rough for us. To still land with people like yourself that saw, Fallout released in the same week?
Same day.
No, not that silly game.
Same day.
EA Sports MMA, please.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And to know that people were, they saw it and they appreciated it. They didn't just like button mash their way through it and then throw it on the pile. They experienced it the way we wanted people to experience it. Like, that makes it worth it. It was a hard game to work on, but not hard in the sense that it was like a struggle and suffering. It was just like all good things are worth the hard work. This was hard work, and then so many lessons were learned about how to run a team, how to run design, how to be humans and work with each other. Everything was really positive about it. And I can't say thank you enough to you and the community that kind of built around the article that you wrote, to a little bit of a slap in the face for me. Like, don't forget, you did some great shit. This was good. People loved this.
Big time.
You brought people happiness. I can't think of too many things in the world that are better than bringing happiness. And so, mission accomplished, and to be reminded means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, I can't say it much better than these two guys. It's an honor and privilege to work with them. Appreciated the community as much as these guys have said. Pretty much the best. I can't say the single best experience of my life, but definitely I harken back and think to those times often, and just how great they were, just how much fun it was, just being part of that team, part of the process, and hanging out with the community and doing everything. And just thanks to you for, again, bringing us some exposure again. And it's awesome to kind of see the responses to it and see all the positive comments, and it's brought all of us back together again a little bit, and just can't thank you enough, and appreciate your time, appreciate the support, and that's it for me.
Well, I appreciate you guys for coming on and doing this at all, because this was very cool. This is, I feel like, a thing that we, between everybody, was like talked about for months, and it even hit a point where I was like, oh shit, I guess that fizzled out. But then here we are. It finally came together. You guys told me a bunch I've never heard before. I'm sure there's a bunch in here that nobody's ever heard before. And I just want to say thank you to you guys for creating such a great game, such an amazing platform for this community to come together. And it's definitely not lost on me how important this was, being like 19, 20 years old, playing this game with my best friend like every night. It was the best shit ever. So thank you very much for the hard work all you guys put in. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you. You know why you were able to make this happen is because of Preston.
It's Preston.
I appreciate that.
I haven't worked with Preston for like a decade now, and he can still wrangle me into doing whatever he wants.
And to that point one more time, and then I promise I'll finally let you go, is there was a comment that came through on the video, and I mentioned like the 10 times XP guy, and somebody left a comment that was like, I hope he sees this. And then I clicked on view replies, and the first one said, I've seen it, with like the smiley emoji. And I was like, oh shit, this is unbelievable. So it's all one big amazing piece of the puzzle. And
it's a crazy smaller world than you ever imagined.
Yeah.
Especially in this industry too. You run into people, you see people credit you work with, like, oh, I wonder if that's the same, Bill Williamson that I work with, So it's a small world, but again, it was a small community. So of course I was going to see something about it. It got sent to me. I went in there, but to Nick's point, like you said earlier, I probably spent way more time reading comments than I should have. I was definitely distracted for a little bit, but it was just awesome. Appreciated just seeing it. And again, thanks so much for putting that together.
Thank you guys for joining me here today. I hope everybody watching / listening had a good time with it. I hope you learned a lot, and we'll see you next time. There you have it. More than 2 hours of storytelling with 3 of the biggest names behind EA Sports MMA. If you stuck around this whole time, first of all, I love you. Second of all, I hope you really enjoyed it. Once again, I want to send a big thank you to Jason Barnes, to Preston Dollinger, and to Nick Laing for not only checking out my initial video, but coming on here today to tell these stories and get these stories out there. This was an awesome thing to be a part of for me, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. It's not every day that you put something out there that was really important to you. For me, it being EA Sports MMA, and I tell my stories, and I'm like, man, if those guys could ever just know how special this was to me and my friends, and then they do know. They hear about it, and then they come on this channel and I get to talk to them directly about it. Just amazing stuff. Very thankful that this happened. Very grateful for the guys coming on. But now I'm rambling, so I'm going to get the hell out of here. Guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, I love you, and I'll see you soon.